Good evening. Good evening, everybody. I hope you're having a fantastic evening already. I know it's only Monday, but why not say I hope you're having a good week as well. We're coming towards the end of our Great British lockdown. Let's hope. Who knows what will happen? But in the meantime, why not gather together, all of us here, assembled in one place, even though scattered across the country and abroad as well. And what we'll do is we'll celebrate the history of Lowestoft with the Lowestoft History Sessions. We feature our wonderful local legend and historian called Mr. Ivan Bunn. And he will be bringing us tonight, episode 21. That's right, 21 episodes so far of the Lowestoft History Sessions. And this one tonight is entitled Suffolk Legends and Ghost Lore. Not just folklore, but ghost lore. He's got some spooky, strange goings on for us tonight to continue the theme from last week. We've already had some comments as well. One from Chris Collins, who says, "Good evening, everyone." Good evening, Chris. Lovely to know that you're there. And Tina Holmes says, "Hello, everyone." Hello, Tina. Thank you for joining us. Linda Boyce, who has been regularly watching since lockdown. Hi, Ivan, Paul, Stephen. Hope everyone is okay. I think we're okay. I hope you're okay, Linda. And the Draper household checks in. Jackie says, "Evening all." Good evening, Jackie. Good evening, Barry. And wonderful to have you join us tonight. Now, let's go back to the subject in question. As I said, episode 21, Ivan Bunn's presentation on Suffolk legends and ghost lore. And now Ivan, as anybody that tuned in last week will know, Ivan is quite a fanatic about the paranormal, and he's carried out his many of his own independent researches into such phenomenon. And what he's doing tonight, although these are Lowestoft history sessions, he's opening it out into the broader region of Suffolk, the county of Suffolk, and exploring some more of the details around us. Now, in the meantime, anybody that's joining us first time tonight, and don't forget, you can join us either on our Facebook pages, which is the Rogues Shanty Chorus or the Rogues Shanty Boys, or you can join us on our YouTube channel as well. Any one of those, and not only can you watch it tonight, but you can go back and watch any of the previous 20 episodes, including this 21st episode, whenever you like. They're still available, and there's an awful lot of wonderfully interesting information there for you to catch up on. So do that, but not yet, because we have a fantastic presentation to come. Now, I do need to let you know that not only do we have the 22nd episode on Monday, the 7th of December. That's 2 weeks from now. But our final episode will be episode number 23. And that will occur on the 21st of December. So just before Christmas, we'll have a Christmas present in the shape of Ivan Bunn for you all. So 2 more episodes from us so far. That will be episode 22, Monday the 7th, and episode 23, Monday the 21st of December. We are looking for some funding to take us beyond that. At the moment, we haven't secured it, so we can't say there'll be any more episodes, but we certainly hope so. And if and when we can secure some funding, we will be bringing these sessions back to you. In some guys might have to adapt it slightly. We'll wait and see, but we certainly hope to bring you some more of these fantastic history sessions. There's a few more comments I'd like to share with you. One is Diana Carver. She says, "Hi all." And Jerry Paul says, "Boo." And I think that's not as scary as we're going to get tonight, I can assure you, Jerry. And Linda Boyce says, "Like that intro, Jerry." I think we all do. And Chris Collins says, "Shared." Thank you very much, Chris. Now, what I'm going to say is, if you are all of a mind to do so, if you're enjoying these, and I hope you are, because I certainly am, then would you please click share? Please click share. This, not just this little lady, but please click share in whatever format you watch us in. And so that might be in your Facebook feed to let people know that follow you, all your friends, your family. Let them know what you've got up to on a Monday night. And if you've enjoyed it, which I hope you are, then hopefully so will your friends and family too. So please click share. That'd be wonderful if you wouldn't mind. Another thing you can do is, if you enjoy these, then perhaps you might enjoy on a Tuesday night, i.e. tomorrow, joining Stephen and I for the Rogues Shanty Chorus shanty sessions, and we'll be giving you some history, but mainly shanties and the context around them, and we'll be singing you all sorts of things about nautical and maritime issues. So please do join us, same time, 7:30 on a Tuesday night, including tomorrow night, and we'd love to see you there. But without any further ado, because we've had a lot of ado, we're full of ado, I'm going to welcome Ivan Bunn. As soon as I just quickly mention that, we have to say thank you very much to our wonderful funders, the People's Health Trust, and this is their logo just here. Thank you very much, People's Health Trust, because they have been funding all of these episodes so far. They fund our shanty sessions as well. They funded us for well over a year to celebrate the unique coastal cultural heritage of Lowestoft and the Waveney area. So thank you very much to them for making this possible, not just the project as a whole, but to make sure that we can still engage with the wider community and people with an interest in Lowestoft and history in general. To be part of that community online. They've made it possible by funding us for all this time, and we thank them very much for it. And so, as I said, no more ado. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please go crazy for Mr. Ivan Bunn? He's right here. Hi, Ivan. How are you?
Really often, but thanks all the same. Yeah, it's nice to be back again. I can't believe this is number 21. I really can't. It's a little bit scary how quickly that time has gone, to be honest with you. But here we are, and we're still doing our things together.
Yeah, come quick.
I take I don't think anybody's particularly interested in me, but a little bit you were saying about my interest in the paranormal. Yeah, that still exists. And I guess what my talk last week and the talk tonight are kind of a reflection of that. Now, more years ago than I like to think now, I became very interested in ghosts and hauntings, simply the paranormal, if you like, and spent a fair number of years going out, member of psychical research groups, trying to hunt down ghosts and collect the stories. But increasingly, in the early 1970s, I actually, as well as being fascinated by the stories, I became more and more interested in the history surrounding the places that were haunted. And that's what brought me into, in the long term, actually becoming a historian. The ghosts sort of led me here, really. So I don't leave my friends behind. And so I keep them with me. And there is an overlap between history and ghost stories. Sometimes an intriguing one. I hope I'm going to be able to illustrate that tonight with one or two of the stories. There's kind of like the ghost story is the residue of an actual event that happened. And I think tonight, I hope tonight I can show you one or two bits of research that I've done on myself, which shed some intriguing light onto some of the ghost stories. That's why I've kind of coined the expression ghost lore. These are not like a week ago when I was talking about people I'd met who'd seen, claimed to have seen the ghost and the old man of Hopton and stuff like that. These are just kind of almost folk memories of something that happened. And to use the old adage, there's no smoke without fire. I spent some time, certainly in the late 70s and early 1980s, exploring the backgrounds of some of the legends through the eyes of a historian to see if I could locate factually facts to do that might have actually I'm getting myself tongue-tied here, that might actually have created a lingering memory in generations of later people who basically forget the incident and but remember aspects of it that then actually turn into a ghost story or a ghost lore. So that's now I also should hasten to add tonight that when I decided to, this is the first time I've actually done this as a presentation, so it's a completely new one. I think months ago I did the Legend and Ghost Lore of Norfolk. Then I was prompted to hang on, I've left my own county behind now. I've got to do one for this county. And I'd collected loads of stories, sometimes just little tidbits. And so I suddenly realized when I decided to do this that I thought I'd always made a rod for my own back, because we have such a rich culture in Suffolk of legends in particular, and interestingly forgotten places and what have you. So what I've tried to do tonight, and I hopefully successfully, with reflection, I should have entitled this talk "Some Legends of," or a taste of, because this talk tonight is just the tip of a fascinating iceberg of folklore, ghost lore, legends, traditional tales from right across the county. So I'm hoping, with fingers crossed, that you'll find it interesting and go away after some of them, hearing some of the stories, thinking, so I wonder why. Why does this tradition exist? Why is there that legend regarding this particular place? And before we start on the talk as well, I just want to say, I'll make no apologies. I'm sure some of the stories tonight and locations might be familiar to you. I know some of my audience here, probably Chris, and good evening, Chris, and Jerry, good evening, Jerry, might be familiar with some of these stories. Even so, I hope you enjoy them, and they give you sort of cause for thought. As I did with the Norfolk talk, I've got a 16th century beautiful coloured map of Suffolk to start each of the different stories. And in case you're not certain where in Suffolk I'm talking about, each place will come up with a little star and the name of the parish or village or town to show you exactly where we are in the county. It's a bit of a shotgun thing. I've just picked up a cross section, so I haven't gone systematically around the county or anything like that. You'll also notice, as you know, I'm in Lowestoft, you'll also notice that many of the stories tonight are fairly close, more on the East Suffolk side than the West Suffolk, because that's my stamping ground, and that's where I've been collecting the stories. Just one more thing I have to say. Back in the 1970s, or the late 60s in actual fact, I became friends with, and he still is my friend, a gentleman by the name of Michael Burgess. We went on many expeditions together in the 1970s, seeking out these places. In particular, we were both interested in the Black Shuck legends. He is a prolific researcher. He is brilliant. There's no doubt about it when it comes to what he calls hidden East Anglia. And he wrote a book called Hidden Suffolk. Couldn't get published, or didn't bother to get it published. From that, he's created a website called Hidden East Anglia. I'll give you the details afterwards. Some of the material I'm using tonight, particularly one or two of the photographs, are photographs that are taken by Michael Burgess. As I said, he's a fellow researcher, a long time friend and colleague, and we've shared lots of interesting bike rides around the county together back in the 70s, digging out these places. And his Hidden East Anglia website is, if you've never found it, is you'll never want to leave it. I'll tell you that now. It's an incredible catalogue with pictures and details of many of the legends. So I'll stop at that point. When we get to the end, I'll just give you the details of his website. I mean, he doesn't make any money out of his website. He does it purely for the love of the research and recording the facts. And I wasn't tonight going to, because sharing a lot of his information with Mike and him sharing it with me, he's had some, he doesn't realise it, but he's had some input into this talk I'm giving tonight as well. And so credit where credit is due.
We've already had a comment. Victoria Amanda says Hidden East Anglia is an amazing website. Absolutely brilliant information on there.
Yeah. And, yeah, thanks, Victoria. You've obviously been there. That it is a really, really incredible website. Mike has dedicated decades to researching and creating a lot of the or recreating a lot of the stories. It's not, and he'll say, well, some of it will be quite wordy, but most of it is like a gazetteer of what's where, with photographs at times as well. So yeah, I'm glad there's somebody out there who will back me up with this website, because don't all go and click off now and look for Hidden East Anglia. You've got a fortnight to do that in. And so, as I said, some of the stories you'll find on his, some of the information comes from that website, and some of it is stuff that I've collected myself, and some of it is the results of research into that those stories that I've done personally as well, mostly back in the late 70s and early 80s. I hate to admit, seems like 2 lifetimes ago now. So anyway, that's enough burble from me. I've got an eye on the time here, so as I said, this is a new one on me, so I hope you enjoy it, and I'm going to hopefully enjoy doing it. I've got my notes in front of me, and so with no more ado, if we'll make start. Thank you. So as I said, we should really, because this is just the tip of the iceberg of stories, legends, ghost lore from Suffolk, this should be really entitled Some Suffolk Legends and Ghost Lore. The first one tonight comes from Barsham, right up there in the on the Norfolk and Suffolk border. I hope this screen is clear to you. And it's the legend of Old Blunderhazard. And this is a traditional story. And very little is known, except, as I put on the screen here, it is an old tradition at Barsham that Old Blunderhazard drives out every Christmas Eve just before midnight to visit Hassett's Tower of Norwich and return to Barsham before he may snuff the morning air. The horses are said to be headless, but always with fire flashing from their nostrils. And this is the lane. I took this photograph in 1978, would you believe? This is the lane looking north, and in the far distance you can see the remains of the site of Barsham Hall. And this is the road, presumably, that every Christmas Eve Old Blunderhazard, with his coach pulled by fiery horses, hurtles all his way to Norwich to Hassett's Tower. Now, I was intrigued because I found quite early on that, in actual fact, in the 16th century, there was a family that lived only for a short period in the basically the last 2/3 of the 16th century, and the name of the family was Blennerhassett. So it occurred to me straight away, as it has to other people, that Blunderhazard was obviously a local corruption of the word Blennerhassett. Now, for some reason, my slide should have changed automatically now, and it hasn't. We just hang on there. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so it's the Blennerhassett family. More about them in a moment. So I did some digging and delving. I actually visited the site of the hall. I'll show you on the map in a moment where that hall was, and the remains are still located. The area has changed a hell of a lot, I might add, since I went there in the late 1970s. So old Blunderhazard, as the legend says, every Christmas Eve he rides from Barsham Hall up this lane out onto the main road, the high road between Beccles and Bungay, makes his way to Norwich, visits Hassett's Tower, more of which in a moment, and then returns to Barsham before dawn, before he might sniff the morning air. So the slide seems a bit sluggish tonight. I'm sorry about that. Ah, there we go. I talked that one up. So if we go further down that lane, this is basically, I think there's probably a wing of Barsham Hall. And just to show you, as an aside really, how much an area changed. It was 1978 I went there, so I don't know how many, what's that? I can't do the math. 42 years ago I took this photograph. Today the area has changed. That's exactly more or less the same spot, and just there in the distance you can see the end of that building you could see in my old photograph. But this is the lane leading up from Barsham Hall, or the remains of the old Barsham Hall, and leading up onto the main road. This is the lane that old Blunderhazard supposedly did, perhaps he still does, come up. Yeah, and the hall has now become a very, very nice residence. It's been greatly restored. When I went there in the 1970s, this building was in actual fact a huge derelict barn. So the hall itself, I wonder if the people who live there actually have seen anything of old Blunderhazard. So if you look at the map here, at the top, there's a drawing I've copied from the only known drawing of the original 16th century Barsham Hall in the Suffolk Record Office down at Ipswich. And as you can see, running along the bottom of the map is the high road from Beccles to Bungay. You can see the track leading directly north to the site of the hall, past Holy Trinity Church at Barsham. I'm sure some of, I know we've got lots of ramblers who listen to these talks of mine, who I'm sure are very familiar of the area that I'm talking in, especially anybody who can remember the great Barsham fairs from the 1970s, halcyon days. And up until the 1930s at Barsham Hall, which might be a link to the story in Norwich, there is or was the base of a very old tower. You can see the tower in the picture below. I've marked on the map exactly where it is, just by that pond that you can see on the map. This became derelict in the 1930s, was eventually the farmer, because we had it torn down. So hopefully, so this is kind of the basic information that I found. The next thing I did, I went to Norwich to see, okay, so he goes to visit Hassett's Tower in Norwich. Where's Hassett's Tower, and why should he go to Hassett's Tower and back again? In a hell of a rush if he's going to get there by coach, leaving in the evening on Christmas Eve and getting back before the next morning. It's a fair old round journey, and the coach and horses. And so if we go to the next slide, please. So I've done a similar thing here. Here's the map. This is the River Wensum. And just to, this is the area leading north from Thorpe Station. If you come out of the station, not cross the bridge, but walk along the Riverside Road, it will take you up into Pockthorpe. You're actually in Pockthorpe. And I found, much to my surprise, that that house that's marked on there was known as Hassett's House, and it belonged to the Blennerhassett family. A William Blennerhassett lived there. And Cow Tower, I'm sure those of you who go to Norwich regularly and do the lovely Riverside Walk have seen this. It's now known as Cow Tower. This actually was also known as Hassett's Tower for some reason. So this is the place that old Blennerhassett presumably had to ride to every Christmas Eve. I can, and I've been in touch with members of descendants of the Blennerhassett family. We cannot find a direct link between William Blennerhassett, who lived in Hassett's House in the 16th century. In fact, his occupation and his family's occupation covered basically the same period as the Blennerhassetts. Just two generations were at Barsham. They weren't there very long. I think from about 1540 to the last one, 1599. So we're looking at a 50 plus 60 year period. And the same thing belongs at the same period the Blennerhassetts were living at Pockthorpe. But even more surprisingly, I also discovered that Bishop's Bridge, there's the picture of Bishop's Bridge when it actually had the gate, Bishop's Gate, on it as well. There's a tradition in Norwich that a phantom coach and horses gallops across Bishop's Bridge from time to time. Unfortunately, not on Christmas Eve, although people might have forgotten that. And there's nothing to account for this legend. The only details that I've been able to find from written sources is the coach and horses, we don't know who's driving it, gallop across Bishop's Bridge, and the driver of the coach and horses has great sparks emanating from the end of his whip as he whips his horses across the bridge and then disappears. So, I mean, it got me wondering, is this the other end of the old Blennerhassett story that's been kind of changed in a way, but certainly the connection between there must be a historical connection between the Blennerhassetts of Pockthorpe and the Blennerhassetts of Barsham. Interestingly enough, quite a lot has been written about Hassett's House. That was pulled down, I think. Basically, most of it had gone by about 1800. That had apparently had quite a number of ghost stories attached to it as well. So the Blennerhassetts seem to have attracted ghosts and actually became ghosts themselves. So it got me wondering, why a phantom coach and horses at Barsham in particular? And so I did some more research. Who might be driving the coach? So if we can go to the next slide, this is the results of my research, which really astounded me. It actually concerns a gentleman by the name, sorry, I dropped my papers, a gentleman by the name of Thomas Blennerhassett, born at Barsham Hall, 1546, died there at 1599. There's the remains of the Blennerhassett coat of arms that's still on the old hall. And I found his will in the Prerogative Court of Canterbury wills, Thomas Blennerhassett, the will made on 4th of May, 1599. And here's the extract that I did a double take with. And this is his will. He only died a few days after making it. And he says in his will, I give unto Mary, my wife, 2 of my best beds, which I have in my house, with all the furniture thereof, to the same belonging, also all her apparel and jewels, and, wait for it, all my coach and coach horses, and all the furniture belonging to the same. So we've identified a member, quite a wealthy member of the Blennerhassett family. We know he was almost certainly born at Barsham Hall, and Thomas Blennerhassett, who owned a coach and coach horses. Of all the wills I've looked at over the years, I've never actually seen a coach and coach horses, and these were important to Thomas. Know nothing more about Thomas, except there was another item in his will that I found tickled me a little bit, and I just wondered a little bit about the family. He says, I give and bequeath unto my eldest son, Thomas Blennerhassett, all my plate stuff and utensils of house and corn and cattle, upon condition that he be loving, natural, and kind to all his brothers and sisters in their necessities. So there was a family. I think the family consisted of, I think it was 3 daughters and 2 sons in actual fact. So here we have a man, Thomas. He dies in 1599. He's got a coach and coach horses. He leaves them to his wife, not to his eldest son. And so this must be the link here somewhere with old Blennerhassett and his phantom coach. What it is, I have no idea. I did speculate once that possibly Thomas, when he was a much younger man, he died, he was nearly 60 years old when he died in 1599, as a much younger man, wasn't, if he wasn't the 16th century equivalent of a modern day boy driver, hurtling around the streets of roads of Barsham and beyond at breakneck speed and quite dangerously, and he's remembered for that, and his exploits in his coaching horses have become literally legendary. But that was a fascinating piece of research. I hadn't resurrected this research of mine. I got the folder out of the filing cabinet and blew the dust off it, and I think now that I've retired and got a lot more time on my hands, my family's growing up, etc., I think I should probably take up this research again and see if I can throw any more light onto the Blennerhassett family. So we'll leave dear Thomas Blennerhassett and old Blennerhassett behind, pondering who they are. And our next step is just literally along the road to Beccles. This is going to be a much less convoluted story, and it's one that's probably well known. This is Rose Hall, just as you come out of Beccles on the road to Bungay. And interestingly enough, there are some aspects of the Blennerhassett story seems to have been attached to this hall, because the hall also has a phantom coach and horses. According to some, let's say that every Christmas Eve a phantom coach gallops out to go to Norwich. I think people have got Barsham Old Hall, which basically disappeared, confused with Rose Hall. It's said to be haunted. The tree that you see in the foreground, known as Nelson's tree, that was supposedly built, planted on the site of a gibbet where they hanged the bodies of executed criminals, and it's said to be haunted by the ghostly figures of many of the people who were hanged from the tree. Inside this Grade 1 listed building, there's, in a cupboard, for some reason, there is an indentation on the wall of a footprint, and it's said to have been made by the devil who kicked the wall inside. A the face of a pale girl has often been seen peering out from one of the topmost windows. And according to another tradition, if you walk round the hanging tree 6 times anti-clockwise, Widdershins, you will actually summon up the devil himself. The gentleman you see there occupied the hall in the second half of the 1870, and Sir Robert Rich, and he links us to the next story that I've got here. This is some more historical research that I did, and so if we can go to the next slide, please. We've gone down now. We're going down the road, travelling south, and we're going to Blytheborough. We met Black Shuck there last week. This time, this is a different story. Here's an 1882 Ordnance Survey map, and a large area of heathland at that time, still not put to the plough. This green area here is known as Toby's Walks. And there's also a barn, or there was a barn on one of the back roads known as Toby's Barn. Now, the story of Black Toby is a gruesome one, an interesting one. And Toby's Walks, that large area that you see there on the map, was put to the plough many years ago. But I'm sure some of you will know, especially if you're ramblers, there is a small area there that's still known as Toby's Walks. And here's the sign from the telling you about Toby's Walks and why they're called Toby's Walks. And here's a photograph of this small area, picnic area that's still there. It's just on the road on the A12 as you leave Blytheborough, and it's on your left if you're travelling south. It's on the as you travel south. It's known as Toby's Walks because the area is said to be haunted by the ghost of a certain Black Toby. Now, I mentioned Sir Robert Rich a moment ago. Sir Robert Rich, in actual fact, had raised a regiment of dragoons, I think somewhere in the region of about 200 men. And his regiment of dragoons, Sir Robert Rich's regiment of dragoons, was at Blytheborough in 1750. We don't know why he had a regiment of dragoons. It possibly wasn't the whole regiment, possibly just a company. But the speculation is that they were here helping the excise men who were plagued with trouble with smugglers in this area and were understaffed, and the dragoons were sent down to help the excise men track the smugglers. All regiments in the British Army had a band, and there was no difference back in those days. And it was a traditional, back in the day, quite often, because of presumably their sense of rhythm, the black, coloured, Negro, whatever is the PC term you have to use today, men were employed in the band. They were members of the regiment. They were drummers usually. And the story is that one particular drummer, one night, possibly at the White Hart Hotel, came home drunk across the heathland as it was there. He met on the way in the dark a young girl by the name of Anne Blakemore. Some people say Wakemore, but it's usually he attacked her. He assaulted her, raped her, strangled her with her neckerchief, and then collapsed in a drunken stupor beside the body where he was found the next morning. And if we can go on to the next slide, we know this is an actual event from the newspaper reports. This is from the Derby Mercury, who took an interest in it and tells us on the 24th of August 1750, at the assizes held at Bury St Edmunds for the county of Suffolk, Toby Gill, or Jill, one of the black drummers belonging to Sir Robert Rich's regiment of dragoons, received sentence of death for the murder of Anne Blackmore, they got here, of Walderswick. Friday the 14th of December next is appointed for his execution. It appears the murder took place somewhere early in July, according to some records at Norwich, at Ipswich. The Derby Mercury recorded on the 14th September, our paper has taken some notice of the condemnation of young Toby Gill, black, at the last assizes for the county of Suffolk, but the enormity of his crime, which was murder, has not been sufficiently known. He was made a drummer in Sir Robert Rich's regiment, a very drunken, profligate fellow. He met or overtook the poor woman he murdered on the road, and on her refusing to comply with his lewd proposal, strangled her with her own handkerchief, and then abused her dying and dead. Overcome with liquor, he was found asleep by the body and immediately sent to prison. He was convicted on clear evidence and ordered to be hung in chains. The very worthy people who tried him expressed himself in passing sentence thus: I have never before desired a power of extending the legal penalties, but if I had such a power, I should exercise in this case. And the Ipswich Chronicle, the Ipswich Journal tells us that after he was executed, his body was to be taken back to Blythburgh, and there, close to the site of his execution, it was to be hung in chains as a reminder to everybody of his crime, and also to remind them what's going to happen if they do a similar sort of thing. And the body hung there for many, many years until it fell down, and that basically was the end of the story, except from then on, there still today stories of his ghost being seen, sometimes, funny enough, in a coach galloping along the road here. There have actually been eyewitness accounts years ago of people who claim to have seen this ghost. So poor Black Toby lives on. I say poor Black Toby. This is really can't go into too much detail. I did this young lady and Blackmore or Blakemore or Wakemore from Walderswick, 1750. She was murdered early in early in July 1750. I went through the parish records of Walderswick, Blythburgh, and all the adjoining parishes looking for her burial. And there's no record of an Anne Blakemore, Blackmore, or Wakemore being buried anywhere near that date. Even more so, I found that 2 years in 1752, 2 years after the alleged murder of an Anne Blakemore, that Anne Blakemore of Walderswick actually got married. And I couldn't help wondering if poor Tobias Gill, Toby Gill, wasn't actually, for some reason we don't know, was actually framed, and he wasn't guilty of murdering this girl at all. Again, I don't suppose we'll ever find an answer to it. If we go to the next slide quite quickly, because I'm conscious that time passes. As I said, if he'd gone back to the map here down at the bottom, the little red square I marked, that you can see clearly, is Toby's Barn. Why it was called Toby's Barn, I'm not certain. I did think at first it might be because Toby was actually incarcerated there. There's the barn, and I took that photograph again in the late 1970s. The barn has gone. It's been completely demolished, unfortunately. Why it became known as Toby's Barn, I don't know. It's a very large barn, or was a large barn. I thought at first perhaps after he committed the crime and he was found and arrested, that he was incarcerated in there, and hence it became Toby's Barn. But I later found that Blythburgh at that time did have its own little prison lockup. I'm wondering, in actual fact, if this isn't the barn where the soldiers from Sir Robert Rich's regiment of dragoons, including Toby, weren't billeted during their stay at Blythburgh. So really, that's the story, the sad story of Black Toby, whose ghost we told. If we could just flick to the next slide, please. And here, this is the road, courtesy of Google Street View, and this is the road just as you come up to Toby's Walks, and this is the stretch of the A12 to the south of Blythburgh that his ghost still frequents. So let's push on to the next slide, please. A complete change of direction here now for stories, although it's an interesting one. This is Cheddar-ston. This, or the remains of this stone, this is a photograph that was taken by Michael Burgess some decades back. It's known as Kedstone, which is supposedly the origins of the name of Cheddar-ston, and it's claimed by some to have been a druidic sacrificial site. And other traditions that we've looked at say that the stone was once an altar to the pagan god Woden, whose worship at the stone was in actual fact stamped or stopped by Bishop Cedd, C-E-D-D, he in 660 AD. And there are other stories that it once the tallest standing stone in England, over 9.1 meters tall, dwarfing Stonehenge at that size. It's made of sandstone. It's just under 2 meters high, on one side, by 1 meters, 1.5 meters. Certainly has shrunk in size. A geological survey in 1887 recorded the stone as being 3 meters. So that's over 9 feet tall and 2.4 meters wide. It seems to collapsed. We've been told that years and years ago, people used to chop bits off it to help with building work and what have you. But it is supposedly an ancient pagan site. And it's interesting to me because we're going to meet one or two stones in the talk tonight. It's interesting to me that most of the random stones found in Norfolk and Suffolk and elsewhere in this area are not indigenous. They're not natural. There is no real natural stone around here. These are the results of glacial drift. These great lumps of rock that would came down in the Ice Age, and when the ice departed, they were lumped behind. And I suppose it's understandable if you go back a couple of thousand years that they must have seemed very odd to the indigenous people around here, how did they get there? They knew nothing of glacial drift or geology or anything else. And so they did, I think, take on a certain mystique of their own. So that's Kedstone. It's now in the grounds of a private house known as Stone Lodge. So we move to the next slide, please. And we're going down to Wesselton next. Wesselton Walks, if you never go down there, it's a lovely place to walk. But we're actually going to visit the church. We're going to visit the church of dedicated to St. Peter's Church, Wesselton. Here we are. Lost its tower many, many years ago, but that's a different story. If you walk up the path furthest away from the camera, if you could, or you could if you go down there at some time, a nice cycle ride for somebody, where the weather's good. If you walk up there and you come, in actual fact, to a witch's stone and a grating. So the grating, hopefully I've indicated, you can't see there's a grating there. There's that small square hole there. There's a grating over there, and the flat stone that you can see immediately in the center of the picture, that's known as the witch's stone, and the grating is known as the devil's grating. The legend is that grass will never grow over the stone, and if you use it as a base, you can actually summon up the devil. What you have to do, you have to place a handkerchief or a piece of straw in the grating, then round the church 3 or 7 times, anti-clockwise, with his shins as always, but never look at the devil's lair, the grating, until you have finished the ritual, and go back to the witch's stone, and the item that you placed on the grating will have vanished. And you'll hear Satan rattling his chains from his underground home. Another version of that tradition, that legend, is if you carry out that run around the church 7 times, in actual fact, you will actually conjure up the devil himself. So that's the devil's grating and the witch's stone in St. Peter's Church at Wesselton. Wesselton's such a lovely place. I don't know how it became to be associated with the devil and witches, but if you pass on to the next slide quite quickly, please. Also in Wesselton, this is Devil's Lane. Why Devil's Lane? Goodness knows, but there was at one time a stile leading to a footpath known as the Red Stile, and sometimes people would see a ghostly figure by the stile at dusk. And in the 1920s, somebody claimed to see a huge black phantom dog, obviously our shuck, back in the 1920s. Well, on to the next slide now, please. We're going to Leiston. There's a shuck, not a very well substantiated story, and not a lot of them, from St. Margaret's Church at Leiston. Way back in the early 20th century, it might have been the late 19th century even, Lady Walsingham told a local author that she and Lady Rendlesham had sat in Leiston churchyard because they'd been told that they will see a phantom black dog known as the galley trot. She claims that they saw it, a huge black dog with glowing eyes that suddenly looked up the road, noiselessly leapt to the churchyard wall and vanished among the gravestones. Later, the same author wrote and gave a different account of her eyewitness report, but she claiming that she actually saw this black dog that disappeared through the church months ago. And interestingly enough, I'm sure some of you might have come across this story. at Leiston Abbey in May 2013, Dig Ventures, an archaeological team called Dig Ventures, were doing some archaeological work in Leiston Abbey grounds, and they came across the grave and skeleton of a very, very large dog. And there was loads and loads of speculation if there wasn't some connection between this buried dog. There's a better picture of him here, and the phantom dog stories from the Leiston churchyard. Dig Ventures, the archaeologists who carried out the excavation, unequivocally denied any claim that this was Black Shuck, stating that the dog was just over 2.5 feet tall, around the size of a mastiff, and they carbon dated the bones, and like a lot of carbon dating, is fairly inconclusive. The date range was there was 3 date ranges. It could have been from 1650 to 1690 when it was buried, 1730 to 1810, or even after 1920. But they were also saying that because of the other archaeological work, they don't seem to think it was buried there at the time that the abbey was actually in use in the pre-Reformation times. But there's an interesting story. There must have been somebody there who really, back in the day, who were really fond of their large mastiff. See, the stories were that the dog was 7 feet tall, but that only comes about if you stand the dog up on its hind legs. He could be just about 7 feet long, but there's no way he was ever 7 feet tall. But it's interesting how things like this resurrect these older traditions. So we're going to move on again quickly. Still got a lot of ground to cover. We go on to Blaxall. Again, we have another stone here with an interesting. This is the growing stone of Blaxall. It's sitting outside the aptly named stone farm at Blaxall, and it's said to have grown over a period of 200 years. The boulder, which is sandstone, is almost 2 meters across and nearly a meter high, and it lies. And according to the legend, it was found about 200 years ago in a field where he was ploughing. He was the foreman of Stone Farm back in the day, and it was about the size of a loaf of bread. And so he didn't damage his plough. He lifted this large bread-sized lump of stone and laid it at the edge of the field and forgot all about it. And some months later, he happened to go to the spot, and much to his surprise, he found that the stone had grown, had started to grow and was a lot bigger, and it's been growing ever since. So this is the growing stone of Blaxall, and again it kind of illustrates, this one large random stone from that doesn't really belong here because we don't have any indigenous stone, takes on peculiar legendary almost qualities. Sometimes it behaves in a mysterious way. Sometimes it's associated with pagan worship, etc., etc. But so that's the Blaxall grindstone. It's still there as far as I'm aware. And go to the next story here. Again, this is one that you might be aware of. This is the wild man or the merman of Orford. and the Wild Man of Orford. It's recorded by a chronicler back in the 13th century, round about the year 1207. He wrote this. Just prior to that, around about 1200. Ralph of Coggeshall tells us that it happened that some fishermen who were fishing in the sea at Orford caught a wild man in their nets. At this, the Castellan of Orford was lost in wonder. The wild man was completely naked, and all his limbs were formed like those of a man. He was hairy, and his beard was long and pointed. Around the chest, he was very rough and shaggy. The Castellan placed him under guard day and night, and would not allow him to return to the sea. He eagerly ate anything that was brought to him. He devoured raw fish rather than cooked, squeezing the raw fish in his hands until all the moisture was removed and then eaten them. He did not wish to talk, or rather did not have the power to talk, even when suspended, poor man, by his feet and tortured. On being led into the church, he showed no sign of belief or of reverence, and did not genuflect or bow his head when he saw anything holy. He always sought out his bed at sunset, and always lay there until sunrise. As to whether this was a mortal man or some fish pretending human shape, or was an evil spirit hiding in the body of a drowned man, it is impossible to be precise. What happened to him, they kind of took him under their wing in a way, and they isolated an area just off the coast with nets, and he was allowed to go there and swim. But one day he managed to get out of the nets and swim out to sea, and was never seen again. So that's our friend Ralph of Coggeshall's story, this intriguing story of this merman, except he wasn't a merman. Mermen were supposed to have tails like mermaids. If you could just click to the next slide, please. In St. Bartholomew's Church, possibly coincidentally, but on the wonderful medieval font in there, one of the supporters is in fact the effigy of a wild man, is, as hopefully you should see in a minute. There's a close-up photograph that I took of the wild man. Now, whether this is meant to be the wild man at Orford, there are traditions going way back. The Green Man, the Wild Man, often known as woodwolves, who lived in the ancient woods and forests, and you do see them quite a lot in churches. So possibly this is nothing to do with the Wild Man of Orford, who was caught in the nets, and it's possibly just one of the traditional wild men, green men, woodwolves of the time. So we're going to move on again. We have another interesting little story here. This is from the parish of Wickham Market, just to the west of Wickham Market. There is a wood. The wood is known as Potsford Wood. And if you go up this trackway, it brings you to a little clearing. And in the clearing, you will see, I mentioned the gibbeting of poor Tobias Gill, or Jill, at Blythburgh. There is the remains here of another gibbet, one that has not a very nice story to it. This is the clearing up that trackway in Potsford Wood, known as the Potsford Gibbet. And it's said that according to legend, there was a large stone that once stood on the site, which would vibrate gently if you tapped it with your foot. Some said that it actually screamed, but that stone has disappeared. But this gibbet is in its place, and there is a label, a sign on it, as you can say. It says the remains of Potsford gibbet in use at the end of the 17th century. Last known hanging was on April the 14th, 1699, of a man called Jonah Snell. On February the 10th, 1698, Jonah Snell was arrested for murdering a father and son by the name of Bullard, or Bullard if you like, who the owners of nearby Leatheringham watermill. He basically hacked them to pieces with an axe. He probably wasn't right in there, and then he wandered off, and they were discovered. Shortly afterwards, Jonah Snell was actually found wandering around the area, clutching axe dripping with blood. His clothes were covered in blood. He was arrested and later tried and was found guilty of cold-blooded murder of the men, and he was hanged, and his body was hanged here on the gibbet, and it hanged here for many a time. And then the ghost stories started. The people from time to time have accompanied a rather horrible phantom, a ghostly figure, half man, half skeleton, all rotting away, who's supposed to appear close to the gibbet. And as late as the 1970s, a delivery driver who stopped by the footpath with his van one evening walked through into the woods and to basically relieve himself, to have a wee. He actually encountered this ghastly ghost, so we're told. The hill on which the gibbet stands and which the wood stands has the fascinating name of Drag Arse Hill. Drag Arse Hill because poor Jonah Snell had to be dragged on his arse up the hill before they executed him. So that's the Potsford gibbet on Drag Arse Hill, just near Wigan Market. So we'll go to the next slide, please. We have a roadside burial here at Kesgrave. It's actually where 4 parishes meet, but it's actually in it's known as Dobbs Grave. It's close to Kesgrave Wood at the side of the road. It's a sad story in a way. It's the grave of a shepherd, a local shepherd by the name of John Dobbs, who in 1740 lost one of the sheep in his care, became very concerned that he would be punished for this, and possibly his punishment would be transportation to a foreign land. He later committed suicide and hanged himself in the barn at nearby Hall Farm. When his body was cut down, he was not afforded the dignity of a Christian burial in the church grounds, but he was taken to the crossroads and buried there. And the idea of burying hanged corpses, suicides at crossroads was that on the day of judgment, when their spirits rose, because they're on the crossway, the road, they wouldn't know, their spirit wouldn't know which way to excuse me, I must just have a little sip of water here. They wouldn't know exactly which way to go. It's other tales have suggested it's a grave of a highwayman who was being left hanging beside the road as a warning to others, or possibly it was a gypsy who'd been hanged there for stealing sheep. In latter years, sadly, this grave has been desecrated. Certainly in 1930s, some drunken airmen desecrated the grave and tried to dig up the remains of poor John Dobbs, and some teenagers did even much later than that. And in the end, I think it was the parish council decided they would protect John Dobbs' body and grave by erecting this fence around it. Again, according to some, the area around here is haunted, and certainly the teenagers who tried to desecrate the grave some years back claimed that when they got there and they tried to dig it up, they all became very frightened because it didn't feel right. Perhaps it was just conscience rather than a ghost. But that's the tale of Dobbs' grave. Okay, our next port of call is to Hoxton. We're going to go way north now here. And this is the story that I'm sure many of you might be aware of. It hinges round St. Edmund the Martyr, King of East Anglia. There he is. His army was defeated in the year 869 AD at the Battle of Thetford, and he fled eastwards to Hoxton, and he was pursued all the way as the King of East Anglia. He was pursued all the way by the heathen Danes. They were closing in on him, so he hid under this bridge, Goldbrook Bridge, and this is where the tradition, the legend starts. We're told that the Danes were searching the woods nearby for him. There is, as you can see on my screen there, there is a plaque saying, marking the fact that King Edmund was taken from under the bridge in AD 870. But the tradition is, the legend is that he was betrayed to the Danes by a bridal party who were crossing the bridge on their way to church to get married. They saw the glint of his golden spurs in the water, and they pointed it out to the Danes. The Danes came and dragged him out, but before he was led away, St. Edmund, King Edmund, angrily spat out a curse directed at any couples who should ever cross the bridge, wishing them a lifetime of bitter regret and unhappiness. And so right up and certainly until the 19th century, the late 19th century, bridal couples would avoid crossing the Goldbrook Bridge in case the curse of St. Edmund did affect their marriage. So that's Goldbrook Bridge. Edmund was taken away by the Danes and tied to a tree nearby. First he was scourged and persuaded to give up his Christian, or they tried to persuade him to give up his Christian beliefs, but he refused despite being scourged. And so he was tied to a tree not far from this site and was shot full of arrows. Hoxton are very, very, a lot of the story in actual fact is questionable, let's put it that way. Nobody quite knows exactly where he was captured, but this is the story, the very old story that's lived on here now for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And in 1879, excuse me, can you just click to the next slide please for me? In 1879, a chapel, not a chapel, a reading room, it's now the Hoxton Village Hall, was erected on the site to commemorate this. This is St Edmund's Chapel, and you can see the top right-hand square picture. In actual fact, there's quite a nice little carving depicting the event of, you can see King Edmund hiding under Goldbrook Bridge, and you can see the party crossing the wedding party crossing the bridge, and there above all is St Edmund, King and Martyr statue looking down, and this is immediately adjacent to the bridge. It's a lovely little spot to visit. It was close by to here that, according to tradition, that Edmund was martyred and killed. And if we pass to the next slide, please. Sorry, can we just change slide, please? Thank you. Here is a picture of him, a medieval depiction of his martyrdom tied to the tree, according to tradition, not far from Goldbrook Bridge. There he's looking up to heaven. You can see actually God blessing him. This is the monument that is erected there. This stands on the site of the ancient oak, which is said to be the same tree that he actually met his martyrdom on. And this oak tree, according to the inscription on the cross, actually, if you can read that, it says here, the oak tree fell down in August 1843 by its own weight, which means it must have been quite a large tree and a very ancient tree. And there is a local tradition, although it's not backed up by any tangible evidence, that when the old tree was chopped up and this was erected in its place, that embedded into the tree, they found quite a number of ancient iron arrowheads, said to be the arrowheads from the arrows of the Danes that actually put him to death on this spot. How much of this, there's no historical evidence that it happened here, but certainly the story is a strong one. And of course, it goes on to tell us as well, the last account of it, the Danes chopped Edmund's head off and threw it away. When the local people and the Danes left, the local people recovered his body. They couldn't find the head, and they started to search for it. And it was actually found in a thicket not far away, being guarded by a wolf. And they were attracted to it because in Latin, the wolf was shouting, "Hic, hic, hic, here, here, here." And they were able to retrieve the head and reunite it with its body. And he finishes up in Bury St Edmund's Bury, the King and Martyr, where hence he got his, where the town name come from. And of course, many churches dedicated to St Edmund have quite often on the ends of the pews, they have some nice depictions of the wolf with the head of King Edmund. So that's King Edmund, Saint and Martyr. We go to the next slide, please. We're getting there. Okay, our next visit is to the village of Hartest, another stone here, not said to be anything ancient, or there's no real legends to do with it, not ancient ones anyway. This is the Hartest stone on the village green, and It's quite a large stone, as you can see, and according to local tradition, it does roll over when it hears the church clock strike midnight, as do many stones. We've got the witches' stones in the entrance to Bellevue Park at Lowestoft, the beacon stones that less bathed in fire, when they hear the town hall clock strike midnight, they run down to the sea for a swim to get back before the last stroke of midnight. This was actually placed, that was dragged from a nearby field on July the 7th in 1713 by 20 gentlemen and 20 farmers. The purpose was to celebrate the peace of Utrecht and Marlborough's victories in the War of Spanish Succession. Another version says that the stone was removed from a field off near Somerton Common in 1713 by 40 horses, and that a trumpeter mounted the top of the stone. Yet another tale says it was taken from Highfield, Somerton, on a sledge drawn by 45 horses on August the 1st, 1714, when King George I took the throne. One version says, I kind of like this a little bit. According to the version about July the 7th, 1713, 20 gentlemen and 20 farmers to celebrate the peace of Utrecht. The local tradition is that after its erection on the new site, allegedly an erotic debauch took place among the people of the village. Interesting. So that's another big chunk of stone with a much more recent history, but once again, another stone that does, according to local tradition, perform odd things when it hears the church clock strike, and also it has significance to that village. We go to the next legend now, and again, this might be one that is familiar to. It's the story of the Green Children of Woolpit. Again, this comes from the pen of Ralph of Coggeshall, who died in 1228, the same man who recorded the story of the wild man Orford, and another chronicler, William of Newborough, also records the story a bit earlier. He lived up in North Yorkshire, and according to the story, 2 children were found by reapers working fields at harvest time near some ditches that had been excavated to trap wolves at St Mary's of the Wolf Pit. That Wool Pit is supposed to be derived from Wool Pit. Their skin was tinged with green hue. Their clothes were made from unfamiliar materials. Their speech was unintelligible to the reapers, and they were taken to the village, where they were eventually accepted into the home of a local landowner. The children would not eat any food presented to them, but appeared starving. Eventually, the villagers brought round recently harvested beans, which the children devoured. They survived only on beans for many months, until they acquired a taste for bread. The boy eventually became sick and soon succumbed to the illness and died, while the girl remained in good health and eventually lost her green tinged skin. She learned how to speak English and was later married to a man from King's Lynn across the border in Norfolk. According to some accounts, she took the name of Agnes Barr. After she learned how to speak English, she relayed the story of their origins, of her and her brother's origins. She reported that she and her brother had come from the land of St. Martin, where there was no sun but a perpetual twilight, and all the inhabitants were green like them. She described another luminous land that could be seen across the river. She and her brother were looking after their father's flock, she said, when they came upon a cave. They entered the cave and wandered through the darkness for a long time until they came out the other side, entering into bright daylight, which they found startling. It was then that they were found by the reapers. So that's William of Newburgh and Ralph of Coggeshall's account of what happened back in the village of Woolpit, somewhere in the late 12th century. These green children. There are loads and loads and loads of not experts, so people who are intrigued by this. Many theories as to exactly what happened, if anything at all did happen there. Again, if you just Google Green Children of Woolpit, you can spend a whole evening reading different people's ideas of exactly what this might all mean, who these children might have been, where they came from, who Ralph of Coggeshall was and William of Newburgh, etc., etc. So if you wanted to follow the story up, certainly there's plenty of material online. Be a bit careful with it sometimes. It's a little bit misleading. Sorry, just another swill of water. We got 2 more places to visit. So we go to the next slide, please. We've gone to Little Cornard on the border between Suffolk and Essex. Now, just like Game of Thrones, nothing would be complete in Suffolk if we don't have some dragons. So we've got 2 interesting dragon here. In a book, I think it's in a notebook in one of the colleges, Cambridge, there is a note that says, memorandum, that on Friday the 26th of September in the year of our Lord 1449, about the hour of Vespers, that's round about 6 o'clock in the evening, 2 terrible dragons were seen fighting for about the space of 1 hour on 2 hills, of which one in Suffolk was called Kiddington Hill, and the other in Essex across the river called Blackton Hill. One of the dragons was black in colour and the other reddish and spotted. After a long conflict, the reddish one obtained the victory over the black, which done, they both returned into the hills above whence they had come. That is to say, each to his own place, to the admiration of many beholding them. So this is a first-hand account, or this is an account of a fight between 2 dragons, a black dragon and a red spotted dragon, one from Essex, one from Suffolk, a place called Kiddington Hill. And the photograph that you see here is looking south towards Blackton Hill from the modern, I've forgotten the name, Kiddington. No, I've got the name wrong now. Yeah, it's still called Kidlington Hill now, not Kiddington, Kidlington Hill. So quite what this is means, I don't know, but it's a fantastic look. And there seems to be something down in that on that Suffolk-Essex border that gives rise to dragon there. So the last story involves another dragon. This goes back to 1405. And again, the account tells us that, well, first of all, there we are. We've actually got the dragon now carved into a hillside in the parish of Bures, just across into Suffolk from Essex. It was done there in 2012 to commemorate the Queen's Jubilee. And it reflects the story that we're told that on a spring day in the year 1405 in the nearby town of Sudbury, the inhabitants were slowly but surely overcome by a wave of panic. The word was spreading that a horrific and dreadful sight had been witnessed down on the banks of the River Stour. According to several reliable townsfolk who had come to see it with their own eyes, an enormous monster had emerged from the water and was breathing fire. As soon as people to the north of the town and the doctors of the town fled to the... Sorry, I'll start again. The people to the north of the side of the town fled indoors, bolted their doors and pulled their shutters. Several brave guys in the town decided that the town must be protected. Armed with bows and arrows, they cautiously approached the river and proceeded to fire upon the strange creatures. Although their arrows made little impression, but they merely bounced off the tough skin, they were successful in driving the beach down enough to return to the water and retreat downstairs in the direction of Bures. In Bures, the creature appeared in an area called Clappets, probably Claypits, and promptly killed most of a flock of sheep and the shepherd tending them. It then set up, it made a home at Smallbridge Hall, at which point the men of the village of Bures decided they had to take some sort of action. Armed with bows and arrows, they launched an attack on the dragon, but failed to cause it any harm as the weapons bounced off the tough, scaly skin just as they had at Sudbury. The villagers gathered forces, and soon the entire population from miles around got together to set off to tackle the beast en masse the best they could. Apparently, realizing that it was outnumbered, the dragon decided to flee. It was seen hurriedly to make its way to the village of Wormingford across the River Stour in Essex, where it plunged into the mere into the lake and was never seen again. So that's the strange fire-breathing dragon from, really Sudbury, Bures and Wormingford, Essex area that we're told was seen there in the year 1405. Quite how we account for these stories, I certainly don't. I just love the tales themselves. They're all part of the rich folklore, legends, and our heritage in Suffolk. And as I said, there are many, many more. That's the last of my stories, by the way. If you just click the slide once more, for me, thank you. So as I said at the beginning, oh no, I'm sorry. I decided to bung this one in right at the end. I didn't put it on my list here. This is Parham, not far from. I'm trying to think where it is now. Parham. No. Anyway, here's an aerial view from. And there you can see under the circle, you can see two little black, what appear to be dots casting long shadows. At least I hope you can see them. There is a very, very simple story here that, again, I'll show you the picture I took back in 1978, 1979, set in the middle of the field. These are called the Parham Pillars. They're said to be the entrance. Here we are. This is the Parham Pillars. They're said to be the entrance to Old Parham Hall, the drive to Old Parham Hall. The hall itself has long since disappeared, but they still sit in the middle of this field in isolation. And there is a tradition here, like many inanimate objects, the stones that we've seen, that sometimes those two large stone balls on the top of each gate post, it's said that they slowly revolve. They slowly turn round. It's, according to some, which might explain why nobody's ever reported it, they turn so slowly that it's almost impossible to see them moving. But these are the Parham pillars, as I said. They stood there for generations now in the middle of the field. And the stone balls on the top of them are said to revolve. I'll finish up with a personal anecdote about this, which is one of the reasons I kind of really love being a Suffolk man, proud of my Suffolk heritage. Myself and Michael Burgess and another friend, we were on a week's bike ride. I forget how long ago it was now. It might have been, it was mid-1970s, I think, when we came to see these. Anyway, we found them with some difficulty. We had to go up a farm track. I don't think it was a public farm track either. And back in the day, we were full of enthusiasm for chasing down these unusual places and seeing them for ourselves, reliving the stories, etc. Anyway, we went along this track and stood here and I took this photograph. And just up to our left, about 100 yards away, was a farmhouse and barns and that. And we heard a dog barking and looked up, and the farmer, quite a lot, I think he said he was in his 80s when he spoke to us, very broad he was. And he came and spoke to us and said, hello, what do you want? So we said, oh, we've just come to look at the Parham pillars and take some photographs. We're interested in this sort of thing. Typical deadpan Suffolk man. This is what I should take this memory to my grave as well. And he stood there with his dog looking at us, and he said, I've farmed this farm for I don't know how long, and so my family before me. And because we were always anxious to collect more anecdotes about any of these places we were visiting from local people, get the local colour. So he'd been telling us how long he'd farmed there. Then he looked at the stones and he looked at us and he looked back at the stones and he said with a twinkle in his eye, do you know why they're still there? And we thought, blimey, we now got to get some more folklore. We've got to get some more traditions. This is great first-hand stuff. We said, no, why are they still there? He said, they're still there because I ain't knocked them down. And with that, he turned on his heel with his dog running behind him and walked back to his farmhouse. I just love Suffolk humour. I ain't knocked them down. So that's Parham pillars, and that does actually bring me to the end of tonight's talk. Sorry, I forgot I'd chuck that one in at the end. I couldn't resist it. So we got one more slide to come. As I said before we started this, I do acknowledge my longtime friend, colleague and fellow researcher Michael Burgess. Many more, and I mean many more stories can be found on his wonderful website, Hidden East Anglia. You can actually just Google Hidden East Anglia and it usually comes up. If not, it's just www.hiddenea.com. And that will bring it up. And I promise you, if you're interested in this sort of stuff, you will not be disappointed. Anyway, thanks to Michael, thanks to you all for coming here. And it's warm in here. My new central heating is working too well, I think. Anyway, that's I hope you enjoyed some of the stories tonight. Something a little bit different. I said I should think for every story I've related to you tonight, there's at least another 10 out there somewhere. We are absolutely so fortunate to have such a rich heritage in folklore and legends in Suffolk.
Yeah,
anyway,
especially the dragons. Who knew?
Yeah.
Who knew there was a big Essex and Suffolk dragon battle? That's a fantastic tale. Pardon the pun. I'm just going to say a few hellos that I didn't get a chance to beforehand, and a few comments as well. So a big hello to Sude, lovely Sude. She's watching. She says hi to everyone out there listening, and hi to Hazel Rumble. Hello all, she says. Now, before you started, Ivan, you made a slight apology to anybody that had heard the tales before. One of them was Chris Collins, and she says, "No worries, I love it all." And Jerry Poole said, "I echo Chris Collins." So there was no need to worry about that.
Thank you, girls.
Yeah, thank you, ladies, very much. Victoria Amanda, she said about the Hidden East Anglia website. She says, I go there often and post his research on a local group. He's built such a great history of everything. This is Michael Burgess, obviously. Can't describe it, but have to visit the site to do it justice. And as Ivan suggested, we strongly recommend you do give it a look. And especially if you've enjoyed these history sessions, you can never have too much history because, let's face it, we have more history now than we had yesterday or last year or a decade ago. We get more history with every passing day, so you can never get enough, and there'll always be more to be had. Tina Holmes, she's made a note to find that website, and as Ivan said, it's not very difficult to find it. She also said, were the Blenner Hysat family Huguenots originally?
Huguenots. It's not certain. I've been way back when I was doing this research. I was in contact with some present day Blenner Hassets and their the descendants of the Blenner Hassets. And if you're interested in it, Tina, if you actually Google, believe it or not, old Blenner Hassett of Barsham, there is a Blenner Hassett family website. They used a lot of my material on their website and their own genealogical family research on there, and you can learn a lot more about the Blenner Hassets and their origins. I would suggest that you do that. I'm certainly got to return to it because having resurrected my notes from 30 years ago, I'm now determined to do a bit more. Now I've got the time. I ain't gone far. I'm determined to do a bit more research myself. They could well be Huguenots. I mean, it's an unusual name.
And let's face it, it's not what you know as Huguenots. I'm sorry.
Can't never mind. Yeah.
Linda Boy says, thank you, Ivan. Fascinating presentation. Never heard any of these stories before.
Oh, that's good, Linda. Thanks for coming along as usual.
And Chris Collins says, thank you, Ivan. Another most enjoyable evening and an exceptional talk.
Thank you. Just a personal, I can't, I could write, I don't know how to say it. Just a personal thank you to Chris. It's got really anything to do with what I'm talking tonight. I just want to thank you, Chris, on Facebook for all those wonderful photographs you get posted up there. They quite often brighten my day, I'll be honest with you. Thank you.
That's lovely, and it's lovely to know that there's a wider community out there as well. Janice Warford, she said, loved it.
Thank you, Jan.
Jerry said, wonderful as always. Loved those stories. Now, Jackie Draper says, thanks, Ivan. We really enjoyed this evening. And Sue Day, also really interesting and fun too. Thanks to Ivan. Now, Gordon Daplin, he says, that was great. Many thanks, Ivan. And I must tell you, Gordon Daplin's actually watching from the very dark, dry and comparatively warm Vale of Glamorgan.
Oh, well, thank you, Gordon, for tuning in.
Yeah, very nice. But as I said, that was great. Many thanks, Ivan, he said. Susan Alderton, really enjoyed tonight, Ivan. Thank you so much. The lovely Diana Carver, she said, thanks again. Enjoyed it as usual. And thank Chris Collins, in response to you, says, bless you, Ivan. So we'll leave it there, I think. As we mentioned, Ivan will be back again in 2 weeks' time. We're back on the 2-week timescale. So on the 7th of December, we'll have another Lowestoft history session, number 22 of the series for you to enjoy, featuring our very own Ivan Bunn. And And I'm going to say good night to Ivan while I just thank our sponsors once again. Good night, Ivan.
Okay, thanks a lot. I'll see you in a week's time, and by then I'll let you know what I'm going to be talking about next week.
All right, mate. Take care.
Stay safe.
As I said, I want to just thank People's Health Trust. They've been funding us, the whole project, that being the Lowestoft History Sessions, and in particular the Sea Shanty Sessions, which is on behalf of the Rogues Shanty Chorus. Now, the Rogues Shanty Chorus is a group of people that join together to sing sea shanties and celebrate the wider cultural impact of that genre on the fishing industry of old in the area, particularly of Lowestoft and the Waveney area. And the People's Health Trust, through the Active Communities program, has enabled us to do this via their funding. And we've worked with people from 2 years old to 90 years young and everybody in between. We have a large group of singers that meet regularly when we can. And even recently we met with social distancing in place and had a great old night singing sea shanties. Now, if you'd like to know more about that, tomorrow night is one of our regular sea shanty sessions. That's on at 7:30 every Tuesday night. We broadcast a live stream right here on our Facebook pages, the Rogues Shanty Chorus or the Rogues Shanty Boys. You can also view it in very high definition, 4D Ultra, which sounds better than it probably looks. On YouTube, on our YouTube channel, you can view it there as well. They're all available, and I think there's a good 30-something episodes, all available to watch again if you're of a mind to do so. But once again, thank you to People's Health Trust for making it possible for us to keep engaging with our community in the Rogues Shanty Chorus, and also to grow that community to a much wider audience. It's been wonderful. In the meantime, if you'd like a little bit more history, and let's face it, there's always more history, you can pick up one of Ivan's books, George Borrow, Alton and Beyond. I think that one might be 11 numbers or out of print at the moment, but you can definitely get a Return to Haunted Lowestoft, which is by Ivan Bunn and Henry Baker. You can also get the report on the trial of the Lowestoft witches, a facsimile of the original report of the trial of Amy Denny and Rose Cullender, a foreword by Ivan Bunn and edited by Mr. Henry Baker. Now, why don't you pop down to Waterstones where you can find them, or maybe you could put an order into your local bookshop. See how you go. Either way, they're available for your delectation if you're looking for a little bit more history. And if you're looking for more history, please do join us in 2 weeks' time. We'll have the penultimate episode of this series of the Lowestoft History Sessions. Ivan will be there. I'll be there. I hope you'll be there too. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful night. Thank you for joining us. Oh, and sorry, one more comment from Chris Collins. What was the website details, please? I believe the website details was www.hiddenea.com. www.hiddenea.com. The EA standing for East Anglia. But if you type Hidden East Anglia into Google, we're fairly confident you'd find it anyway. Anyway, good night, everybody, and take care. And we'll see you tomorrow for the shanty sessions. Take care. Good night.